Hello, friends. Welcome back to Artists of the Way. Did I catch you off guard? Okay. I just saw you out of the corner of my eye. I was like, was Nate not prepared? There's a camera. Nate, I'm recording you. This is an interrogation.
Okay. I see the lamp above us. It's very intimidating.
What did you think of the movie Conclave? There was a lot of heavy breathing in that movie. I think that's a good... That's a good connection. We're starting right off the bat. Okay, spoilers for the... Okay, hang on. This is Artists of the Way. I'm John, the host. This is my friend Nate.
I'm Nate.
He's the co-host now.
Hi.
Hopefully you're used to that now because you've had one episode.
Yeah, come on.
It was just like a hi to like a child. Hi, buddy. How are you doing?
I do have a 1-year-old in the house.
It's just seeping into your bones. Yeah. Listen, we're done talking about parenting. We did that the last episode.
Go back to the other episode.
Yeah, come on, man. Yes. This is the second part of our episode.
This is the adult episode.
If you were a child, my brain really wanted to curse there really badly. I stopped myself.
Nice.
Thanks. I would get fired.
Maybe.
I could get fired now.
That's something.
I feel like
Where would you go?
Where would I go? I have no idea.
What would be the new organization that you'd make?
The new organization I'd make? Artists of the Christian path.
Yeah.
Artists who follow Jesus. It doesn't sound as catchy, but it has the same vibe.
You just have to work that much harder to make it good.
I do. Because the name already sucks. So
overcome.
I know. Surmount it. Listen, we're not Pope John Paul II. We can't all write amazing plays.
We don't know if he can either.
We don't know, because maybe there hasn't been as much time as it would think that there would be in between these two episodes, so maybe I haven't had time to research that yet.
He's joking. He spent the last hour pouring over.
I did. And I'm going to do a dramatic reading for you of good old John Paul numero 2
Electric
right now.
Boogaloo.
And no, I'm not going to do that. But we are going to talk about the Catholic faith. Conclave. Is that like your movie trailer voice?
I guess.
Nice. So this is the second part of 2 episodes that we have discovered is Nate and I talking about our favorite movies of 2024.
Yeah.
Mine's a little bit more controversial, but I'm ready to dive in. I love controversial things, so this is right up my alley. Spoilers for the movie Conclave, which I highly recommend. It's intense,
I liked it too.
Nate liked it too, and we have slightly differing views.
On what?
Lots of things.
Lots of things.
Not really the Christian faith, but
we like it.
Other things. We do like it. That's our shared opinion on the Christian faith.
Feel different about some other faiths. Maybe.
Do we?
Maybe you hate one slightly more than I do. Well, we both hate them a lot.
Down
maybe
with the other
slightly more.
Now we're sounding like a particular character in the movie Conclave.
Yes. He may have had a beard.
He might have had a beard. Maybe I share an ancestry with him.
Ooh, Mr. Italian.
Anyways, spoilers for the movie
Joe
Conclave.
Italian. You're both related to him?
I wanted Joe Italian to be Pope. But yes, I highly recommend it, but it is intense. It's a political thriller about the Catholic Church, which is right up my alley. But
I thought what a great topic for a movie.
I know, just as a premise.
What a great premise. That's the word.
And I mean, premise. So if you don't know what happens in the real world, a conclave, which I'm only learning like in the last couple years. I don't want people to think I'm a know-it-all.
I learned in the last couple weeks.
Oh.
Days,
I know so much more than you.
It's amazing.
No, it's when the Catholic Church, when a pope dies.
As they do.
The Pope is the head of the Catholic Church. I'm just going to over-explain this in case people are really not familiar with the Catholic Church. So the Pope is sort of like, in the view of the Catholic Church, the ordained priest over the entire Catholic Church who leads it. They would say that traces back to Peter.
He's the guy.
He's the guy. He is the Pope. Pope the First.
Do you know who the second Pope was?
I don't know who the second Pope was. Do you know who the second Pope was?
Linus.
Linus?
Yes.
Oh, lovely. Like in Peanuts?
Yes. That's what they
nice.
think.
That's cool.
He's like listed in like one of Paul's letters. It's like, say hi, hey to Linus. Or
nice.
something like that. And he was like the Bishop of Rome, I think. And
that
would have
makes
been
sense. Yeah.
According to the Catholics, that would have been
because that's kind of the
Pope.
seat of the Western Church.
Yeah.
So a pope dies, and you have to get a new pope.
Gotcha.
Which means you need to figure out, ideally, what God's will is for who to have as the new pope. So the way that the Catholic Church now does this is they will sequester their cardinals, which is, I think, sort of like a bishop, but like higher up, and I think connected like directly to the Vatican. Which is sort of
the difference between a
I don't know
bishop and a cardinal.
now I
higher.
have two Catholic things to research, which was Pope John Paul II's plays any good, and
Were they even Catholic?
Were they even Catholic?
Ooh.
Probably. And
that guy.
How exactly does the cardinals fit into the ecclesiology? I believe they're basically a step above bishops, right?
They wear red.
They do wear red.
That's what we know.
We do, because they used red a lot in the visuals of this movie. But they'll literally lock themselves in the Vatican, and then they will vote.
Which is not as nice of a place as you might think.
Not in this movie, at least.
No. It was a bit drab.
A bit oppressive. And then they will choose a new pope through voting and
very democratic,
and prayer and a lot of things. Yeah.
No lot casting.
No.
What was with that?
It's unbiblical.
They should have cast some lots.
Yeah. I wanted them to gamble about the pope.
My church
I'm all
casts
in
some
on being the
lots
pope.
for elders.
I think sometimes it's biblically.
It's like they make sure they choose like good candidates,
Mm-hmm.
and then out of the good candidates.
Yeah, I think it's
lots.
biblically. I think that's biblically defensible.
Why not?
Yeah. I don't know if I'm brave enough to do it, but I think it's biblically defensible.
Right.
Although, isn't eeny, meeny, miny, mo just casting lots?
Yeah, it's just as much chance in that.
That's true.
Although
similar. You do eventually know who you're going to land on.
Yeah, I know. That's what I was kind of saying.
But yeah, so that's what happens when a new pope is elected. And so this movie...
And sometimes different people want to be pope.
Yes, so...
And they'll pretend like they don't.
Yeah, in a perfect world, in this movie, in a perfect world, this is all just led by the Holy Spirit and is decided upon through the will of God. Which, I mean, if you're extrapolating it up enough, it is. God is in control of everything. He's sovereign. Mm-hmm. But there's also a lot of politics to the Catholic Church in particular, because it is still the largest church body, and it is so. People. There's a lot of people.
Groups.
It is groups.
Politics
groups are
right
political. And it's probably, I think it's probably the church body that engages with governments the most, I feel like, from what I know, directly.
Maybe.
But, so it's very political. And, I mean, the Catholic Church being so large. Yes. So this movie, you're like, John, get on topic.
Just want to say things.
Yeah, so this movie, hello.
It's fictional.
So this movie is like, what if that happened again?
What if Pope Jeff died?
What if Pope Jeff died? In this film, the fictional Pope, they never named the Pope, do they?
It's Jeff.
Did he have like a previous Pope name that they refer to? I don't think they even do. He's just the Pope. He's just the Holy Father.
The Holy Father is what they call him.
Yeah. Which is just a nice title. I don't know.
Not a bad title.
It's not a bad title. I like it. Holy Father is just cozy. It sounds cozy, you know?
It's pretty audacious.
It is audacious.
Both of those words.
That is true.
Which word do you think is more audacious?
Holy.
What about Jesus saying, "No one shall call you Father"?
Oh, that's fair. Oh, yeah. Okay. No, I take it back. We're all holy because Jesus has made us holy.
This is a surprise audacious answer.
But Father has become sort of just this historic church term to refer to a priest. Mm-hmm. So they probably are not trying to equate it to like Father is in God the Father, but more just like he's like the priest of priests. And then Jesus is the priest of priests. And the
is
priest
that not
of the
what
priest
Jesus
of priests.
meant when he said, "Don't say that," though?
I don't know. I haven't done a lot of...
It's a bit controversial, that statement.
He was. I don't know the like linguistic history of why we refer to priest as Father yet. So I should look into that. I would like to look into that sometime. I think that'd be an interesting academic study.
Yeah. Let me know.
So I'm not sure. Yeah, I'll look into it. And then I'll tell you what to believe. Dang it, I have 3 now.
He's going to be busy the next week.
I know. So the film Conclave stars Ralph Fiennes, who's great as...
He has a nose in this movie.
He does.
It's pretty good.
Like in Harry Potter. He has a good nose. He plays Cardinal Lawrence.
What a good guy.
Lovely guy.
I liked that guy.
I liked him too. I liked a lot of the guys.
You liked a lot of the guys.
Yeah.
There's several guys I liked.
There are several guys.
I liked especially this guy.
This guy was probably my favorite guy. So he is a dean. And that means, I don't know what he's a dean of, but he is referred to as the dean. And so he is in charge of running the conclave to select the pope. And very early on in the film, he's referring back to a conversation he had with the pope. Because he was... his character is sort of struggling with doubt. I think this film has very interesting things to say about doubt and faith.
Yeah.
And so he's wrestling with doubt, and so he's like, Mr. Pope, sir, I think I'd like to just kind of back off from my duties and just go join a holy order and just kind of monk it up.
Monastery?
Yeah. It's like Benedictine monks is a holy order. So he's like, I kind of
That's
just
nice
want
that
to do
like
that.
he was having doubts, but he wasn't just gonna totally go away. I'm not feeling good, so I don't know if I should be doing my stuff, but I still want to figure this out.
Right. And then the Pope was like, nah, fam. But he gave him this like missional sentence that Cardinal Lawrence is clearly not happy about. But the Pope told him, some people are shepherds and some people are called to manage.
Manage the farm.
To manage the farm. And you're a manager.
Yeah.
And that's like what's implied.
He felt a little bad about that.
He did. He
I'm
didn't
a
like
stupid
that.
manager.
I know. It's like I work at a McDonald's.
Yeah.
But it's the Catholic Church.
It's a pretty good title, actually, manager.
Of the Catholic
Anything.
Church.
Yeah, McDonald's even.
That's true. So it follows him as he seeks to navigate all the political machinations that are happening within the Catholic Church as they try and select a new pope.
Yeah.
And I think it's one of the most raw and honest depictions of the church and the conflicts and struggles within the church of our day that I have seen on a popular level.
Could be. I wouldn't know. What's it like there? I've never been conclaved before.
Well, that's true. I mean, I don't know about in a conclave, but just like general theologically.
Yeah.
Specifically because of in the bubble that we live in America. I'm going to get in a rant about how the world views the church for a second.
Wasn't me. Could be me.
Wasn't you? What do you mean wasn't you? Like you didn't view the church that way?
Whatever you're going to rant against.
Oh, no, I don't think it's you.
Could
I don't think so.
Okay.
In America, we have conservatives and liberals. And it's like, this is the great battleground. And it's between white conservatives and
white
multi-ethnic liberals is the narrative.
Yeah.
And the conservatives are racist and oppressive and horrible, and the liberals are progressive and want to move things forward and are completely altruistic. Okay, this is one narrative. Hang on. This is not being fair to both sides. This is a narrative. There's also the narrative.
Popular narrative.
It is a popular narrative. There is also another narrative in which there's like, we are the conservative church. We're the only ones who care about biblical truth and the heart of Christ.
You're doing the positive side now.
Yes. Wait. Yes. Now there's like the pro-conservative side and the anti-liberal side. But it's all like down to these two things. It's like, and there's all these categories that you fit into. But the reality in the church is that the church does not fit into those categories like at all. Like maybe in America it does. And yes, that's a tense dialogue in America. But the issues that the global church is actually facing, that actually matter to the church as a whole, is not this infighting in America.
Not about taxes.
It's not. Most of the church is looking at America and is like, what the heck? Get your crap together. We're being persecuted over here. What is happening over there? I guess we have to send missionaries over to you guys because you don't know what you're doing or how to navigate these things or how to solve these things biblically or how to find unity. So I guess we're going to send people over and try and not die over here. And it's just like, it is embarrassing and it's horrible. And we treat it like our American church is so important. And like it is. But in the grand scheme of the world, we are not the leaders in the church anymore. At all. Sorry, I got really passionate and
He believes this.
There. I don't think I've
This is coming from the heart
before on the podcast. But I think the film does a really good job of picking out these different And I mean, it can't delve into all these issues that the church is wrestling with.
No.
But it does a really good job of painting these pictures of what's actually going on in the church, and beliefs that are happening in the church. And my favorite microcosm of this that I think is the most obvious one that most people don't think about is the African church is incredibly theologically conservative. Mm-hmm. And most of the world does not know that. But the African church, which is growing tremendously and is, I think, probably within our lifetime, if it hasn't already, will overtake as like the African and Middle Eastern area, I think, will become the center for the church.
Wow.
Which, I mean, it was before at one point. Way back. Yeah, it's coming back. It's like, I'm taking it back, guys. Woo! For Augustine. Yay, Africa. But they're incredibly theologically conservative. So you have all these different factions in Conclave. So you have theological liberals who have been trying to push for more like tolerance and women in leadership, and they don't really specify what, but something about policies around like gay and lesbian people. Mm-hmm. They don't really specify what. It probably would be easy to assume that it's either blessing same-sex unions or potentially just being fine with that at all, theologically. And there's a moment where they're like, dang, it looks like the African contender for the Pope might win. That sucks because he's super theologically conservative. If he was white, we could talk about how bigoted he was, but we can't because he's black.
Got him.
I'm just like, what a raw thing that I was shocked to see on a popular level. It's so just... I think that showed the real depth of understanding of what's happening in the church that this movie had. Even if people are not behind the movie are not Christian, I think it was made with a lot of love for the Christian faith. And I think it portrayed God amidst that film quite well and very subtly and with a lot of restraint. It
wasn't offensive. Mm-hmm. To me.
I didn't find it offensive.
It was to other people.
It was.
Not us.
But the interesting like struggle for this character, it's this and Rings of Power. That's where we can have the unpopular artistic opinions and stick together.
Liking things.
Yes. So Cardinal Lawrence is trying to navigate this and frequently is coming into conflict with these different parties within the church.
He's liberal.
He is liberal.
But he's a very fair guy.
He is, and he's
very
constantly
honest.
He is, and my favorite line of his, he's speaking with, there's sort of these like, I think it's 5 front runners for the papacy, with the Pope, for being elected Pope. The papacy. That like are sort of rising to the top. There's John Lithgow, who is Cardinal Tremblay.
To make it illegal for the whole world to dance now.
He is. He's on the warpath. But you never really know what he believes. He's just sort of there to like game the system.
He's a liberal too.
He is, but he seems a little, he's not as
dogmatic.
Yeah, he's not doing as much of the rhetoric as everybody else. Like you can see he's trying to,
he's one of the
he just wants the papacy, for himself, I think, more than the agenda.
Yeah.
And then you have Aldo Bellini, who's played by Stanley Tucci, who's always amazing. I love Stanley Tucci.
I didn't realize that he was the Hunger Games guy.
He is. Last night. And he's in Captain America: The First Avenger.
I knew those guys were the same.
He's great. I love Stanley Tucci.
He's in a great episode of Monk, too.
He is? Nice.
Yeah.
Good on him. He's in Transformers: Age of Extinction, which is a horrible Transformers movie.
How was he?
About as good as everything else in that movie.
Bad.
Yeah.
Stanley.
He does. He holds... I don't need to get into it. He does some stupid product placement. It's hilarious.
He was good.
He was good.
I liked him at first. Didn't like him later.
I know. But then I came around to him in the end. I think he's reflected on some of the errors of his ways.
That was nice.
Yeah. But he's the liberal front runner. He's American. John Lithgow's character is also American. That is. Americans don't have accents.
That's how it be.
That's how it is. That's our blessing and curse. When people hear us, they're like, wow, I didn't know that people could sound like nothing. But
and then
we
just don't sound cool.
Yeah, because we sound like nothing. There was something on Instagram. I wish I could find this person again, but it's like a dialect coach or something who's like, I love American accents, and nobody gives American accents the credit that they deserve. But here's the things that I love about the American accent. And I can't find their account again, but they were just like, they were like picking different American accents and being like, these are the little things.
Was this person British or something?
I think they were, or maybe Irish. But it was sweet.
Cute Irish person loving us.
Yeah.
I like that.
It was nice. So you have those two. You have Adiyami.
Man, you remember this well.
I just watched it today to refresh.
It's been like a whole day since I watched it, so it's harder.
7 hours, 6, 7, 8 hours, somewhere like that. Adiyami, who is the African front runner, who's also very conservative, but he's not really with a conservative party. And then you have, I'm going to forget his name. This is the one I'm not going to remember. But you have an Italian man.
Big beard
Italian man. Got
brash.
A big red coat.
Gotta let the people know he's a racist.
That's true. He's like ultra conservative to the point of like...
It's a little cartoonish.
It's a little cartoonish. I want to know if there's people... I'm sure some of the viewpoints he's representing are out there. Yeah. But I want to know if there's people out there that encapsulate all of those viewpoints in one.
Yeah, it could be unfair.
It could be, yes. But he's like...
Straw man.
It could be.
Big fat straw man.
Yes. I think it could be a straw man, but I also think because Adiyami is theologically conservative and is also such an empathetic character, I think it maybe gets away with it.
Because we had a better conservative.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then you kind of have two where you have like a really bad version of like the liberal side with John Lithgow and a really bad conservative with Mr. Italian Man.
Right.
And then two better versions of those who are actually more spiritually grounded when push comes to shove when they get down to it by the end of the film.
Right. Yeah.
But Mr. Italian Man is like, it would be better if the mass... No, Bellini was the...
That's an actual guy. And we already said him.
Huh? Oh, we did. He's Stanley Tucci. All these names are confusing. People are going to be like, John, stop telling me. Fettuccine. We'll call him Fettuccine. So Fettuccine is like... I think the Mass should be spoken in Latin again, because that was better. I think the Pope should be Italian, because why not? Italians are amazing.
Italian?
Which, I mean, they are. And then he's like, also, I think it'd be great if there was a holy war again.
Do some wars.
Let's do some warring. Let's persecute, because we're being persecuted.
Yeah, man.
So the correct Christian response is to persecute back.
It could,
which he doesn't reveal until like right before the climax.
Yeah,
which is an intense scene.
They didn't like it when he said that.
No, they didn't. And then Cardinal Lawrence is voted for a couple times. But so these are the main sort of players, and he's like, there's all these political people vying for power and for their agenda.
And there's controversy.
There's
secrets.
There's secrets he's like finding out about these people.
He's detective boy.
And he's just like, I'm trying to just... A, out of love and respect for the Pope, who I knew well and who I think entrusted me with this, and B, out of service to God, I am trying my best to run this in such a way that the person that God wants to be Pope is Pope.
Yeah.
And my gosh, I related to his struggle. Just, it was great.
Did you?
I did. We'll talk about that in a little bit.
I can see him. He's like your spirit animal.
I think Ray Fiennes is my spirit animal.
What? We found him.
But it's just so fascinating. But the line that I love that I think encapsulates like the conflict of the movie is he's talking with Stanley Tucci, who's sort of his, they're like...
That's Stanley. He was all like, guys, I don't want to be Pope. No. Don't even vote for me. I don't want to be Pope. And then later he's like, of course I want to be Pope.
Everybody wants to be Pope.
Everyone wants to be Pope.
But then he has this really nice moment. I'm jumping ahead in the plot. But there's this line between the two of them because Stanley Tucci sees himself as the best possible victor to preserve like a liberal theology in the church and not go backwards as he would see it.
And some of that liberal stuff was surprisingly.
Yeah.
Okay, some of the Vatican II stuff.
Right.
Which I'm not a liberal guy, but some of this means liberal. Some of his stuff was more liberal than me, but some of the like we don't have to talk in Latin. I'm like,
right.
I'm good with that.
I like that. I like being able to read.
I think part of Vatican II was like increased biblical literacy.
I think so.
That sounds good.
Mm-hmm. I think there was a lot of good in Vatican II. But he's like, Oh, I remember what it is. So there's this big controversy that's possibly going to come out. And Stanley Tucci's like, this cannot come out. It's going to jeopardize our cause. It's going to tarnish the Curiate, which I think is like the Order of the Cardinals. And we don't need that right now because we need to be united and we need to be able to push this agenda forward in the church because it's what the church needs. And Ray Fiennes goes, I thought we were here to serve God, not the Curiate. And I'm like, that's a great line.
That was good.
And then Stanley Tucci comes back and is like, don't be naive. Don't be naive. Like, that is a naive idea to just try and serve God amidst all of this. But then Stanley Tucci sort of backs back up on him. He does. He is good. I love Rafe. But yeah, so, okay, I've given like a 30,000 foot view. I've rambled a whole lot. I don't know. What were your thoughts on it? Tell me your thoughts.
I thought it was
stop rambling.
Cinematically interesting.
Oh, yes. The cinematic language was great. I have a lot of thoughts.
Like, the sound design.
Yes.
Made it very, like, my wife Ellie pointed out how, like, they really showing the dichotomy between, like, the holy, mysterious high things and the grungy, everyday things.
Right from the get-go, when the Pope dies, they're like...
cracking knuckles.
Yeah, they're trying to get the
ring.
Papal ring off of his finger, and it's just so... It's one of the most uncomfortable shots I've seen in a while of this... just trying to get this ring off of this dead man's finger that has swollen and will not get off, and then they get it off. And then it goes right into the ritual. It's like, oh, that's just crazy. Yeah.
And you have like the popes like smoking and stuff like that. Not the popes.
There's many popes. This was a very controversial movie. They were like, let's have, what if all the apostles were popes?
Something. But yeah, but like very much like this like high church mysterious thing mixed with just like a lot of like grunge of the environment. And they really played up in the sound design, grungy sound effects, like little big hits on the microphone of like doors closing and different things. And
one of my favorite visual motifs too was the way they used light and darkness and black and white in the movie. So a video essay I'd watched had pointed it out initially that it's very claustrophobic once they cloister. And then there's a moment where light breaks through in a very big way, which we can talk about in a second.
Interesting.
And from then on, it's like this breath of fresh air and like the presence of God is a lot more visible in there. And I feel like that's shown visually a lot through white and light, which is also interesting because every time that they vote, if they haven't reached the decision for a pope yet, they'll put up black smoke. But once they have reached the decision for the pope, they put up white smoke. So it's there's an interesting visual motif throughout of darkness and light, black and white. And I think you can see when it's more oppressive and you either can feel less of God in your situation or the characters are not doing as well at connecting with God or seeking God's will based on how is that? And like right before they make their final decision on who the Pope should be, they're all walking down in white umbrellas and the screen is just kind of covered in white. And it's like, oh, they've all found their purity and their holiness again. They've all gotten back with God, and I love that.
Point.
It has a lot of interesting things to say about man's will versus God's will and like our ambition versus God's design. But I think the thing that struck me most was like the aspect of mystery in it. There's right at the start of the conclave. Hang on. If I start on this, I'm going to go for like 1,000 hours because I'm going to talk about this whole thing and it's going to go long. So I want to ask you if you have any other thoughts, and then I'll come back to that. I'm not going to leave it, but I'm monopolizing the conversation. I want to hear more from you of what you thought. If you have more thoughts.
Maybe as we go through.
Okay. Interrupt me.
Cool.
Throw water in my face and say, shut up, Jon.
Jon. Come on, man. I want to say that.
Okay, I'll talk about this part, and then I'll talk about how I relate to Lawrence, because that will pick up on that thread that we were talking about last episode.
We're going to pick up the thread.
We're going to pick up the thread. I wrote it down.
I think you have more thoughts about this one.
I just loved it so much.
It's something.
So, also, side note, before I jump into this, one of the reasons I loved it so much is I think it is a movie that treated the Christian faith in our day-to-day life and a relationship with God with the weight that I feel it with. And I don't think I have ever especially not in Christian movies, ever seen it accurately depicted with that amount of weight. Like, it felt like these decisions that were spiritual decisions were life and death. And the artistry behind it was just so behind and supporting that I was like, wow, this is how it feels to me to navigate these spiritual situations, to navigate. We talked last episode about difficult situations in people's lives and figuring out how to navigate those as a Christian. I'm like, this is how it feels to me. This heavy, this weighty, sometimes this oppressive. It's like, I don't think that the decisions we make in the Christian faith and the way we walk out that faith has ever, to my knowledge, on film been treated with so much weight and such high stakes as in this film. And obviously there are very high stakes in this film. But, so mystery. Near the start of the film, there is a random cardinal who rolls up. And
Chuck.
His name's Chuck. Oh darn, what is his name? I don't remember. But he's Mexican and was ordained as a cardinal in pectorum, I think is the word that they used, which basically means in secret by the Pope, because his ministry is to be in Afghanistan, one of the highest persecuted areas of the church. But the previous Pope that died is like, well, I think Afghanistan deserves a cardinal because the ministry going on there is that important. So this is the man I'm choosing. I'm doing it in secret so that it's not public, so that he's safe and protected.
Yeah.
And so he just rolls up and they're just like, a random cardinal appeared. We don't know who he is, but he has all the documents to like certify that he is one.
Guess he's a cardinal.
I guess he's a cardinal. And so they're like going to lunch and Lawrence is like, hey, all you other cardinals, I'm introducing this new cardinal. Please pray for us. And immediately he has this lovely prayer.
Nice little prayer.
He has a nice prayer. He does the classic Catholic prayer for a meal.
And then they
all
start to sit down.
And he's like, no, I've got more.
I've just got a few more sweet things to say.
And he doesn't make a big deal out of it.
No.
He just keeps going.
No, because he's just like, I'm a real believer that cares about people.
Mm-hmm. And so he prays. It's just a beautiful prayer.
Simple.
And he's just sort of in the background for this. He's an important character, but he's in the background for most of it.
And he thinks that our main guy should be Pope.
Yes, he thinks Lawrence should be
should
Pope. He votes for him several times.
And Lawrence is like, stop voting for him! Stop it! No! He's like, no, I'm going to vote for you. You're the guy.
Yes. So...
Like, oh, I guess maybe I am that.
maybe I am, dang it. And then Lawrence gives a beautiful homily about faith and doubt, and he is wrestling with doubts in his own life about prayer. There's an interesting discussion about...
Didn't get much specific other than that.
It didn't.
But I thought it was nice that it wasn't like a doubting God's existence. It's just, he's struggling just with prayer. Okay.
There was a lot of questions about doubt, but it was never about God. And that was another line that I really loved, was from Stanley Tucci, talking about the Pope and his doubt. And he's talking to Ray Fiennes, and it's like, the Pope doubted too, because they're talking about their doubts.
Yeah, I guess even the Pope,
like,
if the Pope can doubt in God, then, and then Stanley said,
it was never in God, but he doubted the church.
Yep.
And I'm like, oof, that hit hard right now. Because there's a lot of churches that I'm like, they're not doing church very well.
Yeah.
They don't seem to be the body of Christ very well. But I think a lot of times that was, again, just a nice, beautiful thing that you're not seeing.
These filmmakers didn't go for like, let's have some atheist popes up here.
It's like, instead it was like, no, God is important. We humans are flawed.
Yeah.
And the church is going to screw up and has and will, and that's awful and should not be minimized.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that God is not still as real and powerful and gracious. You don't have to doubt God. You can doubt the church.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Even if, I'm Anglican. I think the church has an important role. We're pretty high church. We think the church traditions are not like ordained from God, but that they matter. I like the church, but it's fine to doubt the church.
Yeah.
The church messes up, but you don't have to. That doesn't mean you have to doubt God. I mean, you can't doubt
that
God,
was beautiful to see.
Yeah. So Lawrence is wrestling with his doubts throughout, and it's all very subtextual. Like, I don't know exactly what he's doubting. I just know he's struggling with prayer. And so he gives this homily to all these cardinals to sort of set the tone. And he talks about, he says, I hope that we have a pope who doubts, because if we didn't have doubt, there would be no need for faith. And if we didn't have the tension between faith and doubt, there would be no mystery.
What did you think of that?
I loved it.
You liked it?
I did like it.
I wasn't sure what to think of it.
Because I don't think that doubt... I think he's right in that doubt is in some sense part of faith.
It's part of the wrestling?
Yeah, because...
We who wrestle with God?
Faith is leaping over the chasm of doubt.
Yeah.
Not to say that doubt isn't there, not to not recognize it. If you're jumping over it, you still have to recognize it and do the jump, right? But
what if you don't have doubt?
Yeah, well, if you don't have doubt, then I don't know. Then you...
Is that nice?
I mean, yeah, well, okay. Sometimes I don't doubt. This is going to be a weird conversation because I'm going to talk about ways in which I'm relating to Lawrence and some of his doubt. And I'm also going to talk now about how sometimes I don't doubt.
That's fine.
I'm a complex individual.
Yeah, man.
Like, sometimes I wish I doubted a little bit more than I do, because, and I don't know, maybe this is unhealthy of me. Maybe I've just had a tragic life. But a lot of times I'm like, everything could blow up, and would I be grumpy? Yeah, but I'd probably be fine with God. He kind of knows what's best. Like, I'm not going to doubt that, And I'm like, that seems inhuman of me.
Oh, I see.
And in some sense, I think
you're like, if you had a bigger love for people, you would doubt the pain that comes from God more.
I don't even know if it's that. Like, it makes me feel like my relationship with God in some sense is just robotic, where I'm just like, I'm just always doing this.
I see.
I think there's some dynamism that you get from doubt. I think there's some things you learn from doubt in that wrestling. And I think... And
with the goal of
greater
overcoming greater faith. Yeah.
And I think there's some sense where maybe we'll wrestle with our doubts our entire walk. But if we cling to the faith...
Yeah.
Like, there's some things...
there are solid things about God to hang on to whilst we have other doubts.
Right.
And so you want to be hanging on with that one hand, right?
Well, and I liken it to my theology of the Eucharist, which is that God is, Jesus specifically, is really present in this bread and wine. That it is in some sense really his body and blood, even if that doesn't... I don't believe in transubstantiation, which is that it is physically turned into that. But I believe that he said that, and I believe he said, if you eat my body and drink of my blood, or unless you do this, then you have no part in me. And I don't understand how that can happen. But what I can cling on to is Jesus' words, that he's present in that. This is a specific theological example to me where I've seen that. Sure. I think you can extrapolate that out further. So do that work yourselves, guys, and make it more general.
Work out your own salvation.
Yeah. Good quote. Liked it. But it's like, okay, I maybe don't get this. Or some Sundays I'll roll up and I'll eat it and I'll drink some wine, and I'm like, well, feels like all I've done right now is eat some bread and drink some wine.
Was it even good bread?
I like communion bread.
Yeah, right.
I don't know why, but I do. But then I'm like, okay, maybe I didn't feel it or whatever, but God said he's there, so I believe he's there.
Yeah, man.
I think there's a great value in that. Sometimes I wish I did that. I think the people who doubt can be some of the strongest believers and the most empathetic and the best at sort of reaching people and navigating things with them.
Right.
Because
they're not just Pollyannas.
Right. Because it can be... I have to do a lot of work to empathize with somebody who's doubting God's nature. And I don't like that I have to do that. Somebody who's doubting God's goodness, because I just don't, and I don't know why. I try and count it as a gift because it's nice.
Yeah.
But I just don't. And I don't like that, because then if I'm missionally trying to reach somebody, they're like, man, how do I even know that God's good? And I'm just like, because he is. That's a stupid question. I'm like, that's not a very kind mission response.
That is a gift, though, especially if you recognize it.
But it is like this two-edged sword where, in some sense, that's great that I've never doubted God's goodness of character and goodness towards me. But on the flip side, those people who have doubted that and have had to wrestle with that and go through that have some other areas of their faith deepened that I may not. And have had to sort of... Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It's like, oh, I wish I had a more interesting testimony kind of thing. Yeah. But then it's like, I have to just remember that God is the author of all of our stories, including like the struggle we have with not having an interesting story. And that there are struggles with that. And those don't sound interesting, but those are struggles because we don't get maybe that as clear of the night and day difference that someone who was brought out of a life of drugs and stuff like my dad or whatever. But God writes our stories, and he's in charge of it, and he knows what we need to work through towards glory, towards sanctification, even if it's this inner weird thing like you're talking about. Yeah, it's cool. So I think there's this thread of mystery with God that weaves throughout, and I just think the film wonderfully portrays God's presence, because there is one scene where I think you can pinpoint and be like, right there, that's God. But most of the time it's just there's just sort of this air that he's there somewhere, he's doing something, it's mysterious, he's taking us somewhere, but we don't really know where it is. So eventually it gets to the point where our candidates for Pope have been eliminated one by one because of scandals or this or that. And it's basically down. And it's basically down to Cardinal Lawrence is the only liberal option. So it's Cardinal Lawrence or it's Mr. Fettuccini. Who is like pretty racist and not great. He's like, can you imagine if we had an African as a Pope? And I'm like, well, screw you, mister. Have you read the Theology of Augustine? Then you like Africans. Sucks to be you. Probably didn't.
Wow, he's missing out. Yeah. It's like the foundation of the Western Church. Church? Church. He's the foundation of the Western Church. Well, other than Jesus. Theological interpretation. Anyways. And Lawrence is like, maybe I should be Pope. Yeah? And I was kind of like, you go be Pope, buddy. I was like, you're the right choice. And write your name in. Mr. Mexican man who's been supporting you. Don't be false humility. Right. Write your name in. Yeah, write it in. Did you notice he wrote it with worse handwriting than the other times he wrote in? Oh, that's cool. He with the other names was just very like, I think Nate Script or something like that, but his name was just kind of uneven, blocky letters. Cool. That's neat. Yeah, so it's one of, I think, the most exquisitely directed sequences in the film, which is saying something because it's full of exquisitely directed sequences. When he breaks the seal, that's he breaks the seal into the Pope's room at one point, and that just has so much weight to it. He's getting sneaky. So great, he's getting sneaky. But he's like, okay, I'm going to vote for myself because I think it's what's right. I think I should be Pope. And I think as an audience, you're kind of behind him. Yeah, you didn't want to be Pope, that means you should be Pope. And he screws his courage to the sticking post. It's stuck right there. And he brings it up to where he's supposed to turn in his vote, and he says the thing that they say right before they cast their vote in the film. That's a cool thing they say. They do. It's like, I swear before, I think it's like before you and before God that this is truly who I believe should be Pope. Yeah. It's something to that effect, but it's more elegant and cool and Italian or Latin or something. And he's like, I 100% believe that this is God's will. Sets the ballot down. As soon as his ballot slides in, the Sistine Chapel explodes. Yeah. And light pours in. Yeah, because they boarded up the window so that eavesdroppers couldn't listen to the glass. Yes, that's a very important detail. So this room has just been oppressive and dark this whole time. And then he's like, I think I know what God's will is, and it's for me to be Pope. puts it in, boom, light shining through. And it's like,
did you know right away what that meant? Because I was like, does that mean yes or does that mean no?
I don't know if I knew right away. I'm trying to think back. I think I thought no, because something about it didn't feel good to me.
Oh.
There's something about the filmmaking I was like, this feels more dreadful than inspiring.
Right.
And there was just this silence that hung over it. And light streams in for the first time. And you find
it was
out
because of a bomb.
that it was a suicide bomber. Yeah. Blew it up. And then Mr. Fettuccine is like, see, this is why we need a holy war.
We gotta get those guys who blow us up.
And people are like, maybe not that far. And then our fun surprise cardinal stands up and gives, I think, just such a beautiful speech about the church.
He's very unpolitical either way, right?
He's very unpolitical, but he is like, you're calling for a war, but I've actually seen war. And what you're talking about is not going after this suicide bomber or this car bomber, but these women and children and men. That's what you're talking about. And we're talking about everything that the church has been, but what we do now and how we move forward is what the church is. Maybe this was subtextual, maybe this was just how I took it, but it felt like we're fighting over all these things in the church. But what if we just did what Jesus told the church to do and moved forward? And we sought to make disciples of nations. We sought to care for the poor, the widow, the oppressed, the foreigner, the orphan, all of these. And just do that and look forward and do that. And he just says that and sits down in a stunned silence.
They're stunned.
They're stunned.
We're so silent.
We are very silent.
Why are we so silent?
Because it was a good speech.
Nice speech, dude.
And so then they all come with their white umbrellas, and it's like, oh, it seems like, and you're like, oh, I wonder if it's going to be Pope. And then they vote for Pope again, and you hear Lawrence a few times, and it's like, oh, I wonder if it's Lawrence.
We like Lawrence.
We finally get Lawrence in, and then you just get this montage of people clapping, and then you see Lawrence clapping.
He's not clapping for himself.
He's not clapping for himself, and you see that this surprise cardinal was named Pope.
Pope Phil.
Pope Phil. And he chooses the name Innocent, which I think is
that was sweet.
Lovely. That is sweet. And then controversy happens once again.
Yeah.
This is the most controversial thing.
Maybe not even necessary, but it was interesting.
It was interesting. I liked it. We can talk about why in a second. And then we can talk about how I relate to Lawrence. This is getting to be a long episode, but I think it's great. I just have so much to say about this movie. I love it. Lawrence, Cardinal Lawrence, good old Rafe, has had this like assistant that's been like going out into the world.
Chad is
his name?
Yeah.
Good old Chad. Chad's been going out because he's sequestered. He cannot go out. So he's like, I need you to research this.
You're my Watson.
You're my, yes. Because he's like, there's all these like things that are maybe happening and I need to find out because if these people are unqualified to be Pope, they should not be Pope. And
I like when there was something that came up, he always went to the individual.
He did. My favorite scene still was, as far as going to the individual, was still probably the one with Adiyami, though. I thought it was so beautiful. Yeah, the African.
Yeah, that was.
Because there was a mistake 30 years ago in his past. And he was like, yes, I made a mistake, but I was a different man and there's grace. Yeah. And I believe that God's calling me to the papacy. And he's like, you won't be Pope. It was a sexual scandal, and he's like, not the worst sexual scandal there could be, but a sexual scandal. And he's like, the church will not elect somebody who's had a sexual scandal in their past. We are trying to get away from that. And it's just this raw scene as this man's like hopes are just breaking down and he's sobbing. I know. And at that point I was like, he'd be a great Pope. I would love an African Pope. I'd be so behind an African Pope.
That would be cool.
Dude. Right? I've
never seen that.
I know. It'd be so cool.
Have we?
No, I don't think so.
I haven't.
I have not.
You neither?
No.
Oh.
No. But, and he's like sobbing and breaking down, and Lawrence is about to go, and then he asks him to pray with him.
Yeah.
And Lawrence is like, of course, and sits down and prays with him, even though he's having doubts about prayer. And all that. Anyways, where were we? Scandal. Yes. So he has his Watson Chad who's going out to like do all this investigating and stuff. And there has been a question about what's the background of this cardinal. They've been finding things out about him.
Yeah, he had like
He had like some health issues. He had a ministry
but
toward
no,
women.
not health issues?
Yeah, there was a health issue. He was sent to a clinic in Switzerland by the Pope to take care of a health issue that they didn't know about. And then he decided not to, he never ended up actually going through to the clinic. Mm-hmm. And the guy finally finds out what it is. And Ray Fiennes goes to confront him. We haven't found out yet.
We don't know.
Speaks to him and is clearly very disturbed and is like,
we just elected the Pope, but he's got something wrong.
He's got something wrong with him that the
him.
church maybe is not okay with. And he is like, you are about to be the most famous man in the world and one of the most important men in the world. You need to tell me what your situation is. And immediately this guy knows what it's about. So he asks for privacy and shares that the medical procedure that he was going to get would be a hysterectomy.
What?
To remove his uterus.
I thought this was a guy.
Yeah. It's crazy.
It is a guy.
It is a guy.
I'm okay
I
with it
think.
because it's a guy.
Yeah. Not that I think you could also, I think you could have a theology discussion. It's not just because he's a guy as opposed to being a girl. Hang on.
That's it.
Yeah. That's, hang on. Now I'm muddling my thing. Because what it's adjacent to is the discussion about the transgender community, right? And so I don't know what the filmmakers were intending, but immediately he has an intersex disorder. He was born with an intersex disorder.
Yeah. He thought he was a guy his whole life.
Right.
He is a guy.
He is a guy,
He's got
but he
these
has a
extra
uterus.
parts. He's like a super guy.
And a chromosome is messed up in there because that's what causes an intersex disorder. Is there's some weird chromosomal thing, and then which intersex disorders can be anything. Balding can be an intersex disorder.
Whoa.
So yeah, I know I could have an intersex disorder.
Dude.
I don't think I do. I think I just have male pattern baldness. Thanks.
Okay.
You think I could be the Pope if I turned Catholic?
You might.
Oh,
You might like that.
I don't want to be the Pope. Not me.
You'd make a great Pope then. You didn't even want to be the Pope.
Oh, just stop.
We should make him the Pope.
But it is this weird, uncomfortable place because it's really close to this current modern sort of
But it's not
theological
there, so I'm
squabble.
okay with it.
But it's not there. I'm okay with it. But what I do like is that the person that in the story God shows as Pope is unexpected, is messy, is not able to be like
picture perfect and like pinned down to a box.
Mm-hmm. And he has a very beautiful speech too, because he's like, I thought about going and getting my uterus removed so that I would match my sex, what I essentially am, but I felt weird modifying my body. I felt like that it might be a greater sin to tarnish God's handiwork than to change to map myself and all of my parts to being completely just male parts.
I'm assuming he's got the male parts.
Well, yes.
Because he didn't know until he was like into
so
his
it's all like
priesthood
interior,
that this was a thing.
right? And so, but
because he had such great guilt when he was like, I'm a priest, and am I a girl?
Right.
Or something like he's
right. Which I mean is fair if you like discover you have a uterus. You're like, what is that?
Yeah.
But it's messy, it's interesting, and it's not something that we know what to do with, but God knows what to do with it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
It made me think. I was like, am I okay with this? I'm not entirely sure what the movie's saying.
Right.
And I am.
Yeah.
What I was trying to say was, if they were like, if the genders were swapped and it was like a woman who was born with an intersex disorder, I would also arguably be okay with it. There's more question around theology and like women in leadership, but what I was trying to say earlier was like, I'm not okay with it because he's specifically a man, but because of where it's like landing on the theology there, where I feel more comfortable with it. Because I had a muddled statement earlier on. So it was less about like what sex is he and more that he's embracing how God created him. I like that. And it did it in a messy way, which I think is appropriate for the time that we're in, because it's a tricky time to be living in and navigating as a Christian. But I feel like that just puts the cap on the mystery thing of God is like, I'm so mysterious that even the person that I chose to be Pope is also mysterious and weird. And you can't quite pin him down, but he is the person I made for this. And I love him. and ordained him for this.
Yeah.
In the world of the movie, obviously, depending on your theology of the Pope.
Fake world, real God.
I know. So I just thought that thread of mystery throughout was really nice.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to jump to one other discussion, and then we can put the pin in the point from earlier, because I wanted to touch on discernment.
Oh, yeah.
With watching something, and I think this more naturally flows into it. So, did you have any thoughts on any of that? Because I just talked a lot.
Oh.
I feel like I'm just like rambling on this episode.
I said mostly, like, I felt like they were trying to be quite weird, controversial, and for a second so. I thought that, but then like,
it's not
clearly
really
he's just a guy, so it's not really controversial. So I don't know if the filmmakers know that it's not that controversial.
Wanted to be. Right.
But I think other people maybe think it is controversial.
I liked that it made me think.
Yeah, it did to me too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And here's where I'm going to talk about discernment.
Okay.
Because there's been people online who've just been like, boycott this movie, don't watch this movie.
What? Who said that?
Ben Shapiro. Well, he didn't say. He said watch it and then be angry about it.
What did he not like?
That
it's just so politically charged. He's a political animal.
No, he thinks that they were saying that he was transgender. Is
Come on.
I think what he says. Yeah,
that's not what they were saying.
I know. I don't think so either. But there's a lot of Catholics who have also been like, this is not an accurate representation of the Catholic faith. Don't watch it. Granted, I'm Anglican, I'm not Catholic. So I'm Catholic adjacent.
I could feel like you're messing with our thing. This is not how we do our thing.
So I can see that.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of times that sort of that idea of just don't watch this thing. This is bad and shouldn't have been made. Boycott it, don't watch it, but talk about how it's bad. And then that's labeled as discernment. I'm being discerning as somebody who's taking in art. I think it's more compelling and more growing as a Christian person. Granted, caveat, this is a matter of conscience, so your conscience and the Holy Spirit will lead you to, like, I'm never going to watch Game of Thrones.
Right.
Maybe a Christian can watch Game of Thrones and be totally fine and then wrestle with some interesting things. I can't. That's just, it's got too much in it that I'm like, I don't want to fill my brain with this. It's going to be bad for me.
Thrones.
Right. I can't deal with Thrones.
They're pokey.
But some other people are fine with Thrones.
Fine.
They're like, I don't care about pokey Thrones. I don't want them. I can deal with it and watch and be like, what if pokey Thrones and God? But for me, I'm like, nah.
Pass.
Pass. But I think it's a lot more compelling to be like, and it's kind of like the argument against banned books, right? Like, immediately I'm like, to a degree, banned books, I think there's a lot of banned books that are like, well, that was just badly written, like, smut, you know?
Yeah.
But
the Apostles banned some books.
That's true.
Magic books.
That's true. But immediately when there's a work of art that somebody's like, boycott this, I'm like, it would be a lot more compelling to watch it and then discern. Don't discern before you've watched it and say, this is automatically bad. Maybe Conclave is not as beautiful a representation of the Christian faith and a relationship with God and the mystery of God and the state of the church as I think it is. But I think it's a lot more compelling and interesting because we've talked about this movie. I've ranted about this movie at least for like 58 minutes.
Pretty good.
That's a lot of conversation topics.
Yeah.
I think it's a lot more compelling to watch, take in a piece of art that will make you think, even if it's uncomfortable, even if it's trumpeting a worldview that you don't like, to think about it and wrestle with that and come to a place. I love that ending was just offbeat enough with that cardinal that I was like, oh, am I okay with that theologically? Has all of this journey been worth it for me? Now I have to wrestle with this and do a thought experiment about this situation and try and see what this film is saying about that and what are the themes there. And obviously other people are going to read that scene differently than I do. Ben Shapiro and I read it very differently.
Yeah.
But I love that it made me think. Yeah. And then I am being discerning by taking in the art and then discerning afterwards. And then if I'm like, that's bad for me, I'm not going to watch it again.
Right.
And again, there's still some like
you can know ahead of time that it's going to be
right.
Not a good thing to consume
Right.
at all.
Like
right?
Nosferatu just came out recently.
Yeah.
And even though I know the director's great, I'm like, I'm not going to watch that.
Yeah.
I know there's junk in there. I want to watch another one of his movies, The Northman, I want to see very badly. But I'm not going to watch Nosferatu because I know what's in it.
Right.
And I know that's not going to be good. I'm not saying no Christian can watch that and not get something out of it.
Yeah.
But me, no. Certainly not.
Yeah.
But if it's just because it's trumpeting a worldview, I
just
don't
a
like,
worldview thing.
then I'm like, yeah, I think maybe you should dive in. I think maybe you should dive in.
No, I don't think that we're necessarily captive by the art of the world and that, just because somebody makes a thing, now I have to give 2 hours of my time to have to watch it.
Right.
But I think what you're saying is true, that there can be a lot of growth through the wrestle. And I know for me, that's often like, that's uncomfortable. I don't want to have to deal with that wrestling. But I think it's probably good. It can be a growing thing to wrestle with it rather than just throw out something. And because even if there's people you trust, like I like Ben Shapiro, but I don't agree with everything he says. And like in this case, I liked this movie where he hated it, and so
yeah, I think it's valuable. Do we want to talk about that unfinished point from earlier?
What was it?
That's right, because it was about mystery. What I wrote was God's mystery. Huh? Maybe we did talk about it. God's mystery enables us to love and carry out his will. Yes, because Lawrence, this is what I was thinking, Lawrence doesn't really quite know what God's will is.
No.
We were talking last episode about how messy it can be.
Yeah.
Trying to live that out. It's about the heart of it, right? Lawrence, I think, is a great example of that. He doesn't know who should be Pope.
No.
Until the end.
Right.
And he's being messy, and he's like, I really don't want to pry into these people's lives. But I guess I really have to, and that's messy. He does do a lot of prying. He breaks a seal on the Pope's room, which he's not supposed to do. That poor seal died. He murdered a seal in cold blood.
No more bouncing balls.
No more. Yeah, but like he does like all these things and is like snooping around and like ruining people's lives. Like at least one guy's life. Yes. Good. But in all of that, I think within the fiction of the film, I think he ran that conclave exactly how God wanted it to be run. I think arguably the only mistake he made was when he was like, I should be Pope.
Maybe.
And I'm not even convinced then. I just think that that's sort of the darkest point where it's the hardest for him to kind of see what God's will is.
Right.
And then God breaks through in a really powerful way of like, nah, buddy.
Yeah.
But I think that that's interesting. And I love it, especially because he says he's struggling with his prayer. He says he's having doubt in prayer, which is, of course, our primary sort of relational interaction with God. And you'd think if you're discerning his will, it's primarily through prayer. It should be, right? And like scripture and things, but like prayer should be surrounding all of that.
No, I've definitely been in like times in my life where it's like, I really want to know the answer of the thing to do. But then God like taught me, I'm probably still learning, but that like that faith, it's not faith if you know everything of what it's going to be, how things are going to turn out in the end. That makes it hard.
It does. And that's the part that I feel like I've been relating to a lot with that character. I think I was talking to Shay earlier today, and I think I maybe go through this every winter and haven't realized it. But like right now, I feel fairly distant from God in my prayer life, which is sucky because I'm praying almost every day because I'm Anglican, so we have morning and evening prayer. So I have my scheduled times of prayer, and I'm trying to talk to him throughout the day and trying to find moments of silence. But it kind of just feels like I'm throwing it out there.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, I guess I know you're listening. And it's not like I'm never getting anything back, but then there's also a lot of life changes happening, some of which I can talk about and some of which I can't. And
we go beyond words.
Yeah, and there's a lot of like heavy situations that I'm navigating.
Yeah, man.
And I'm like, man, Lord, I'd love to feel a little bit more sure that you were like hearing my prayers and were with me. And like, I know you are, but like, I don't get that deep sense of your presence. Like, it feels murky. It feels oppressive. It feels like that sort of situation Lawrence is going in. But then it watching it again today, I think it was
Valley of the Shadow of Death.
Yeah, and just remembering, okay, God is with me. God has a plan. God is leading me through this, even if it feels like my relationship with God is like survival mode is the word that's coming to mind, which is not to say it's in an unhealthy place, but it's just like for some reason that feels like it's like a long distance relationship right now, and we're still touching base a lot, but it's not like we're hanging out at the pub every night.
Yeah. So what's God's purpose in that phase of a relationship?
I don't know.
Oh.
I don't know. But it's been encouraging to me to remember that he's still there and working. And I think this movie was a reminder of that even though there's really hard situations that I'm navigating and I'm praying about them, but a lot of times it feels like I just have to trust that God's Spirit is with me, and I just have to try and do my best in the moment, which sometimes is good and sometimes is not good. I had a time this weekend that was maybe not my best moment in navigating a situation, and I've had some other times where it has been a better, navigation of a thing. But
so it's kind of stretching a different aspect of your relationship.
Yeah.
That faith that no matter what your feelings are and what comes, that he's there and he's leading you.
And the faith that no matter if I know what to do or not, that he's there. Because to an extent, probably partially because of so many life changes, but also there's just a lot of crazy situations, and I connect to God a lot through nature, so when it's wintertime, I'm not out in nature as much because it's cold. But it's like, wow, there's all these things that normally I would go off and spend half an hour in the woods to like pray about and hear from God and be like, sure that that's what God's got me doing. Whereas now it feels like, okay, I'm praying, I'm touching base, I think I'm making space to try and hear him and trying to submit it to him. But it feels like I just kind of have to do my best to try and honor him as I go. But I have to trust that even in that, as long as I'm being faithful, probably even if I'm not always being perfectly faithful, that he's still working and he is still faithful.
For sure. And there's times where we had a sermon at church the other day about patience over pride out of Ecclesiastes. And the idea was, one of the ideas is that if something is God's will, part of his plan, it's always going to include patience. And just how there's so much more blessing that God gives us when we go the route of patience versus the pride of making things happen ourselves. And he used like David as an example of like so often throughout his story, he's just looking to God. And then the one time that says that David thought in his own head was when he was going to go live with the Philistines and like fight for them and stuff like that, which could have had really, and it did have bad consequences to it. But that was him rescuing himself from a situation versus the time where he's escaping from Absalom and this guy is hurling insults and curses on him, and David's men are like, should we just go kill that guy? And God's like, no, if God wants him to curse me, let him, and he'll take care of it, kind of thing. And that's just an example of like trusting God with that patience. So just being okay sometimes with like not knowing what the answer is right away.
Yeah. And knowing that you're not going to damn yourself if you don't know the right answer, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And my pastor said, like, of course, there's things like sometimes we have to do things, but like the overriding principle is who's driving the car. Is it us or is it God? Is it him directing us to do something, or is it him doing something, or is it us making something happen?
Right.
And that's where things get dangerous.
And I think we can trust that he is driving the car, even if it doesn't always feel like he's driving the car. Like if we're overwhelmed or we're just kind of like, I feel like it's just like day by day right now, you know, and like, well, I'm just taking each moment as it comes.
Yeah,
I don't have a lot of time for forward
sure.
thinking and deep discernment on topics, and I'm trying to take time when I can and stuff, but I can still trust. I'm telling Jesus to take the wheel, to take it from my hands, which is a song that has surprisingly deep, rich truth to it.
Yeah. No, because I think day by day living is a beautiful way to live, because that's the only place you can live in a way, because you can't live in the future because you're not there, and God's with you right here. Yeah.
And God is big enough. If you're really seeking His will, He's big enough to redirect you if you're not making the right choice.
Yep. You just keep that open heart.
Or to convict you if you do.
Yeah.
Like, it's kind of like doing a play. Sometimes I'll do a performance and I'll be like, well, that time it wasn't quite as good. I'll make a note of that and I'll do it better next time.
Yep. Pray God make use of it despite my weakness.
Yep.
Yeah.
Which sometimes those are our best nights in plays.
Yeah.
People are like, wow, I was moved. And I was like, why? I sucked.
Right. It's like, why couldn't you have been moved when I did good?
Yeah. Moved by my awesomeness.
Yeah. That should have been really impactful to you.
Yeah.
But God gets His glory.
Amen. Well, this was lovely.
Yeah.
Really long episodes of the last two episodes.
There's two of us now.
We like movies, and there's two of us. Cool. Well, thank you for being here for the thing you've committed to.
This is my home. I live in this corner now.
You do? Ha, how the turntables. Now I've kidnapped you.
It's okay. Nice corner.
Great corner. And I can pay my mortgage so my house can stay put together.
I'm paying to be in this corner.
You are. It's great. I can quit my job now. Cool. Well, have a good week, guys. God bless. Thanks for tuning in. We're not radio. We're a podcast.
Tune that dial.
Tune that dial to
get rid
Apple
of the static.
CarPlay. Yeah.